I used to think there was nothing in this world I couldn't share with him. Lucas and I were born 2 minutes apart. Him first, me second. Growing up, we were inseparable, always knowing what the other was thinking before a word was even spoken. Our bond was unshakable, built on late-night whispers under shared blankets, inside jokes no one else understood, and the unspoken rule that we'd always have each other's backs. But there was one thing I never told him. One thing I buried so deep inside me that it twisted my stomach in knots every time I looked at him for too long. I was in love with him, not in the way brothers were supposed to love each other, not in a way I could ever say out loud. So I kept it locked away, forcing myself to ignore the way my heart clenched when he smiled, the way his voice sent shivers down my spine, the way I noticed every little thing about him, things no one else did. The tiny scar above his left eyebrow from when we were kids. The way his eyes darkened when he was lost in thought. The way his fingers twitched when he was nervous. I thought I could live like this forever. Pretending. Hiding. And then, one night, everything changed. It was the summer before college, the last stretch of freedom before our lives would split in two. We were at a party by the lake, the kind of place where the air smelled like smoke and beer, where bodies moved in sync to a bass-heavy song blasting from someone's speaker. Lucas was in his element, laughing too loud, drinking too much, flashing that effortless grin that made people gravitate toward him. I stayed back, watching. I always watched. That's when I saw him. A guy I didn't recognize. Tall, lean, dark-eyed. He was standing too close to Lucas, his gaze lingering a second too long, his smile carrying an edge of something I recognized. Desire. I swallowed hard. It wasn't jealousy. It couldn't be. Lucas turned, caught me staring. He grinned. "You good, man?" I forced a nod, but my grip tightened around my cup. The night blurred on, filled with laughter, drinking games, and the distant sound of water lapping against the shore. But no matter where I stood, my gaze kept drifting back to them, to the way Lucas leaned in when he spoke to him, the way their fingers brushed, a fleeting touch that made my stomach twist. And then, Lucas kissed him, right there, in the middle of the party, like it was nothing, like it was easy, like it didn't feel like my whole world had just tilted off its axis. I turned away before he could see the look on my face, before he could see the truth. I left the party before he could notice, before my face could betray me. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I stumbled away from the dock, my pulse hammering. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay there, couldn't watch him with that guy, couldn't let this thing inside me consume me in front of everyone. I made it halfway up the hill toward our car when I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey, where the hell are you going?" "Lucas." I wiped my face quickly, not even sure why. "Nowhere. Just needed air." He jogged up beside me, slightly breathless, and shoved my shoulder playfully. "You Irish goodbyed me, dude." He grinned, but his brows were pulled together like he was trying to read me. I forced a chuckle, shoving him back. "Figured you were busy." Lucas scoffed. "With Adam? Please. He's just a guy. Just a guy." The words sat like lead in my stomach. He nudged me again, softer this time. "What's up with you?" I hesitated. Too long. Lucas narrowed his eyes, that twin instinct kicking in like it always did. "You're weird tonight. What's going on?" I needed to say something. Anything. So I went with a half-truth. "I just didn't know you were into guys." Lucas blinked, then let out a short laugh. "Seriously? That's what this is about?" I shrugged, trying to keep my expression neutral. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. "I mean, yeah, I guess. I never really thought about putting a label on it." He smirked at me, playful again. Not like I was keeping it a secret or anything. A bitter taste rose in my throat. He could be so casual about this. So free. Meanwhile, I was standing here, pretending my whole world wasn't cracking open. "Right. Yeah. Makes sense," I said, voice tight. Lucas studied me for a long second. "Are you?" He didn't finish the sentence. Maybe he didn't need to. I scoffed, shaking my head. "No, man. Just surprised, that's all." His gaze lingered on me, like he didn't quite believe me. Then, with a final playful nudge, he said, "Well, don't go getting all weird about it. Now come on. Party's not over." For him, maybe. I let him drag me back toward the dock, even though I wanted to be anywhere else. The music was louder, the crowd rowdier, but all I could focus on was Lucas. The way his smile came so easily. The way Adam found him in the crowd, and Lucas didn't hesitate before slipping right back into his orbit. I watched, stomach twisted, as Adam leaned in, murmuring something against Lucas's ear. Lucas laughed, tipping his head back slightly. He looked happy, and I hated myself for wanting to be the reason why. I turned away, swallowing hard, and that's when I felt it, a pair of eyes on me. Someone was watching. I glanced up, and there he was, Adam, not looking at Lucas, looking at me. For a brief second, something passed between us, a flicker of recognition, like he saw something in me that no one else did. Like he knew. I should have looked away. Should have acted like I didn't notice the way Adam's gaze lingered on me, sharp and knowing. But I couldn't. Something in his expression made my pulse stutter. Curiosity, suspicion, maybe even amusement. Like he caught on as something I hadn't meant to show. I forced myself to turn, to blend into the crowd, to pretend like I wasn't affected. But even as I laughed at jokes I didn't hear and drank warm beer that tasted like regret, I could still feel his eyes on me. And then, as if the universe had it out for me, he showed up beside me. Ethan, right? His voice was smooth, casual. I stiffened. Yeah. Adam smirked, leaning against the wooden railing beside me. You and Lucas are twins. Not a question. Just a fact, like he was testing the weight of it in his mouth. I took a slow sip of my drink. Yeah. He hummed like he found that interesting. You don't really look alike. That was something we'd heard our whole lives. Lucas was a little taller, his features sharper, his presence naturally magnetic. I'd always been softer around the edges, more reserved. But even so, we were still mirrors of each other in ways most people didn't notice. Adam did. He tilted his head, studying me in a way that made my skin itch. You're different from him. I scoffed, forcing a smirk. You've known him for what, 2 hours? And you've got him figured out already? Adam chuckled. I didn't say I had him figured out. His eyes flickered over me. You though? You're harder to read. A sharp thrill ran through me, but I shoved it down. Not much to read, I muttered, turning away. He didn't push. Just let a silence stretch between us, heavy and charged. Lucas reappeared a few minutes later, slinging an arm around my shoulder. Dude, why are you hiding over here? He turned to Adam, grinning. Is my brother boring you to death? Adam's lips quirked. Nah, he's interesting. Lucas laughed. Right. Ethan, interesting. I'll believe it when I see it. His words were teasing, affectionate, but they stung. Because in his eyes, I was just Ethan, the quiet twin, the one who stood in his shadow. Adam didn't laugh. He just looked at me, his gaze lingering. I don't think he gives himself enough credit. The words were simple, but they knocked the air out of me. Lucas, oblivious as ever, clapped Adam on the back. Come on, let's get another drink. Adam hesitated for a fraction of a second, then followed him. But before he left, he glanced at me one last time. Like he knew, like he saw right through me. I tried to shake the feeling after that night. Try to push it down, ignore it, pretend none of it had happened. But Adam didn't let me. The next time I saw him, it was 2 days later. Lucas and I were at a gas station, picking up snacks before heading to the lake, when I felt that same prickle on the back of my neck. I turned, and there he was, leaning against his car, sipping from a bottle of water, watching me like he'd been waiting. Lucas, as usual, didn't notice anything. Hey man, he called, walking right up to Adam with that easy grin. What are you doing here? Adam smirked. Getting gas. Same as you. Then his eyes flickered to me. Hey Ethan. I swallowed. Hey. Lucas started talking, something about the lake, about a party happening later. But I wasn't listening, because Adam was still watching me, and I didn't know why. It kept happening. Little moments. Little glances. I'd catch him watching me across the room. I'd feel his gaze like a weight on my skin. Whenever Lucas was around, Adam played it cool, but when it was just the two of us, something shifted. Like now, we were at the lake again, a small group of us hanging out near the water. Lucas was in the middle of it all, as always, but I had pulled away, sitting on the edge of the dock with my feet dangling in the water. Adam sat down beside me. Not too close, but not far either. For a while, we didn't speak. Then, you don't like seeing him with me, do you? The words made my blood go cold. I turned my head sharply, my pulse roaring in my ears. What? Adam didn't look at me. He tossed a small rock into the water, watching the ripples. You heard me. I swallowed. I don't know what you're talking about. He finally turned then, his gaze locking onto mine. I think you do. Something inside me snapped. You don't know anything about me. Adam studied me, his expression unreadable. Maybe not, but I know that look. My breath hitched. What look? He gave me a small, almost sad smile. The one that says you wish you were him. My whole body went rigid. The air between us crackled, thick and suffocating. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to laugh it off, to push him away. But I couldn't, because for the first time in my life, someone saw me, and I didn't know what to do with that. After that, I started avoiding him. It was easier to pretend nothing had happened if I didn't have to look him in the eye. But Adam wasn't the kind of guy who let things go. One evening, as I was leaving work, I found him waiting outside. Seriously? I muttered, tightening my grip on my bag. He smirked. I wanted to talk. I don't. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. Why are you so afraid of this? I glared at him. I'm not afraid of anything. Adam tilted his head. Then say it. My heart pounded. Say what? That you want him. The words hit like a punch to the gut. I shoved past him, my breath unsteady. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. But he did. And that was the problem. Because now, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending. Avoiding Adam wasn't working. No matter how hard I tried to put distance between us, he kept showing up. Not in an obvious way. Not in a way Lucas would notice, but in small, deliberate moments that felt like they were meant just for me. A glance across a crowded room. A touch that lingered half a second too long. A smirk that said, I see you, even when I desperately wished he didn't. And worst of all, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Or about what he'd said. Say it. That you want him. It had been playing on a loop in my head for days, a taunt and a challenge all at once. I wanted to believe he was wrong, that he had no idea what he was talking about. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wanted Lucas, not just as my twin, not just as my best friend. I wanted him in a way I'd spent years trying to suffocate. And now Adam knew I was unraveling. It all came to a head one night at a bonfire by the lake. A perfect summer evening, warm breeze, the scent of burning wood and salt in the air, the sound of waves lapping against the shore. Lucas was, as always, in the center of it all, laughing, drinking, effortlessly pulling people into his orbit. And Adam was right there beside him. I try not to watch, try not to let it get to me. But when Adam leaned in and whispered something in Lucas's ear, making him laugh, really laugh, I felt something inside me snap. I pushed off the log I'd been sitting on and stalked toward the trees, needing air, needing space. I barely made it a few steps before I heard footsteps behind me. Ethan. Of course it was him. I clenched my jaw and kept walking. Not now, Adam. He grabbed my arm, stopping me in my tracks. Yes, now. I wrenched away from his grip, turning on him. What the hell do you want from me? My voice came out harsher than I intended, raw with something I wasn't ready to name. Adam didn't flinch. He just looked at me, steady and unshaken. I want you to stop lying to yourself. I let out a hollow laugh. You don't know me. His eyes darkened. I know enough. Silence stretched between us, thick with tension. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling sharply. This isn't your business. Adam stepped closer. Maybe not. But I see you, Ethan. And you know what? I think you hate that. My stomach twisted. You don't see anything. He tilted his head. Then look me in the eye and tell me you don't want him. I opened my mouth. Closed it. I couldn't say it. Because it would be a lie. Adam's expression softened, like he already knew my answer. You've been in love with him for how long? I swallowed hard. Don't. He didn't push, but he didn't back off either. You think you're hiding it, but you're not. Not from me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. He took another step closer, lowering his voice. I don't get it, Ethan. You're hurting yourself for nothing. I looked away, my chest tightening. He's my brother. Adam sighed. I know. He hesitated. But love doesn't always make sense, does it? A sharp, broken sound slipped from my throat. This isn't love. Adam studied me, his gaze heavy with something I couldn't name. Then what is it? I didn't have an answer. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure anymore. And that scared me more than anything. I should have walked away. I should have let Adam's words roll off my back like they didn't matter, like they hadn't sunk their claws into me. But I stood there, my breath coming too fast, my chest too tight, my whole world tilting dangerously on its axis. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan," Adam said softly. Something about the way he said my name, like he was speaking to the deepest, most hidden part of me, made my stomach clench. I looked at him then, really looked at him. There was no judgment in his eyes. No amusement, no pity, just quiet understanding. I hated it. "Why do you care?" My voice cracked, but I didn't bother clearing it. "Why does it matter to you?" Adam exhaled, shaking his head. "Because I know what it's like to want something you're not supposed to." My breath caught. The fire crackled in the distance, and for a moment, the sounds of the party felt like they were coming from another world, one I wasn't part of anymore. I forced out a laugh, hollow and bitter. "So what? You think I should just tell him?" Adam's gaze held mine. "You think he doesn't already know?" A sharp bolt of panic shot through me. "He doesn't." "He does," Adam interrupted, voice calm but certain. "He might not have put a name to it, but he feels it. You don't grow up that close to someone and not notice when something shifts." My stomach twisted. "You don't know that." Adam shrugged. "Maybe, but you do." I shook my head, stepping back, the ground unsteady beneath me. "You don't understand." Adam followed, his voice quieter now. "I understand more than you think." He hesitated, then said, "I had a best friend once." I stilled. He was my world. I spent years convincing myself it wasn't what I thought it was, that what I felt was normal. That one day, I'd wake up and everything would be fine. Adam's voice dipped, like he was remembering something he didn't want to. But I never woke up from it. And one day he left, his lips pressed together, and I never got the chance to tell him. A lump rose in my throat. "I'm not saying it would have changed anything," Adam continued. "Maybe it would have ruined us. Maybe it would have saved me." He looked at me then, eyes dark and serious. "But at least I wouldn't have spent my life wondering." I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding in my ears. Lucas's laughter rang out from the bonfire, easy and carefree. He had no idea what was happening just a few feet away. No idea what was breaking apart inside me. I clenched my fists. If I tell him, I lose him. Adam shook his head. "No, if you keep running from this, you lose yourself." The words struck deep, sharp and cutting. I turned away, sucking in a shaky breath. "I can't." Adam was silent for a long moment. Then let me carry it for you." I froze. Adam stepped closer, his voice steady. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan. I see you. I see all of it." I turned to him then, my vision blurred, my chest too full of something I didn't know how to name. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I found Lucas sitting on the dock, his feet skimming the surface of the lake, the moonlight turning his skin silver. He looked up as I approached, grinning like nothing had changed. For him, nothing had. For me, everything had. "Thought you ghosted the party," he said, kicking at the water. "Adam said you weren't feeling great." Adam. He had covered for me. Again. I swallowed hard and sat beside Lucas, my hands curling against the damp wood. "I needed some air." Lucas nodded, accepting the answer without question. That was the thing about him. He never pushed, never pried. He just existed beside me, effortlessly like he always had. But I couldn't keep pretending. Not anymore. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas turned to me, his brow furrowing. "Okay." My stomach twisted. My heart pounded. But the words were already there, waiting, desperate to be freed. I took a breath. And then, "I love you." The words hung between us, fragile and unsteady. Lucas blinked, confusion flickering in his eyes. "Yeah, man. I love you too." No, my voice cracked. "Not like that." Silence. Lucas stared at me, his expression unreadable. I could hear the waves lapping against the dock, feel the cool breeze against my skin. But all I could focus on was the weight of the moment, the way the air between us felt electric. And then, softly, "I know." I sucked in a breath, my heart hammering. "You what?" Lucas let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "Come on, Ethan. You think I don't know you?" His voice was gentle, but there was something else in it, something I couldn't quite name. "I've known for a long time." My chest tightened. "Then why?" "Because I didn't want to hurt you." His gaze softened. "Because you're my brother, and nothing could ever change that." A lump rose in my throat. I had spent so long terrified of losing him, of ruining everything. But Lucas wasn't running. He wasn't disgusted. He wasn't leaving. He was still here, still mine. A shaky breath left my lips, and suddenly, Lucas pulled me into a tight hug. I stiffened for half a second before sinking into it, gripping onto him like he was the only thing keeping me afloat. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Lucas exhaled, squeezing me tighter. "Don't be." And just like that, the weight I had carried for years, the fear, the shame, the suffocating silence, finally lifted. Maybe love didn't always make sense. Maybe it wasn't always meant to be easy. But in this moment, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone, and I never would be.